Then, proving that Allah was a wannabe terrorist too.
Tabari. The next morning Allah opened the township of Sab bin Muadh for them to conquer. There was no stronghold in Khaybar more abounding in food. After the Prophet had defeated some of their settlements and taken their property, they reached the communities of Watib and Sulalim, which were the last of the Khaybar neighborhoods to be conquered. Muhammad besieged the inhabitants between 13 and 19 nights.
Calling Islam peaceful ranks as one of the most egregious lies of all time. It wasn't even war. The Muslims weren't out defending themselves or their religion. This was a terrorist raid and a racist bent. While Islam has always been violent, Muslims have seldom been good at it.
Ishaq and Tabari. Encamped at their fortress, Muhammad presented his war banner to Abu Bakr and sent him against the Jews. He fought, but he retreated, suffering losses. The following morning the same thing happened to Umar. When they returned to Muhammad, Umar's companions accused him of cowardice, and he accused them of the same. The messenger said, "Tomorrow I shall give the banner to a man who loves Allah and His messenger. Allah will conquer it by his means." The next day, Bakr and Umar vied for the war banner, but the Prophet called Ali, who was suffering from inflamed eyes, and having spat on his eyes, gave him the banner. Ali advanced upon the people of Khaybar. In the fight he lost his shield, so he laid hold of the fort door and used it as a shield. He kept it in his hand as he fought until Allah gave Muslims the victory. When the siege was over, 8 of us tried to lift the door, but we couldn't even turn it over.
Either the skinny-legged fat boy of Mecca got a personal trainer, or he found one hell of a propagandist. Abu Qadi hadith starts off the same way, but ends rather oddly.
On the day of Khaybar, Allah's apostle said, "Tomorrow I will give this flag to a man through whose hands Allah will give us victory." Ali said, "O Allah's apostle, I will fight them till they become like us."
Like us? Does that mean cruel? Demonic? Does that mean they'll become mercenaries and terrorists?
Allah's apostle said, "Proceed, and when you enter their town, call them to embrace Islam, and inform them of Allah's rights, which they should observe. For if a single man is led on the right path of Islam, by Allah through you, then that will be better for you than nice red camels."
I don't know what is more perverse, suggesting that the victims of a terrorist raid should be called to Islam before they are slaughtered, robbed, enslaved, and raped, or suggesting that a man's soul is better than
nice red camels.
Moving on, the Sunnis wanted us to know that Abu Bakr and Umar were no less brutal than Ali.
Tabari. The messenger often had migraines and would remain a day or two without coming out. When Muhammad encamped at Khaybar, he came down with a migraine and did not come out. Bakr took the Prophet's war banner and fought vigorously. Next Umar took it and fought with even more ferocity than the first fighting.
Then, in some of the most despicable words ever scribed in the name of religion, we read in both Tabari and Ishaq,
Ali struck the Jew with a swift blow that split his helmet, neck protector, and head, landing in his rear teeth, and the Muslims entered the city. Muhammad conquered Qummas, the
Jewish
neighborhood of Abi Huqayq. Safiyah bint Huyayy was brought to him, and another woman with her. Bilal led them past some of the Jews we had slain, including the woman's dead husband. When she saw them, the woman with Safiyah cried out, slapped her face, and poured dust on her head. When Allah's Prophet saw her, he said, "Take this she-devil away from me."
Grieving for those who have been butchered as a result of Islam was beyond Muhammad's capability. This woman cried as she was dragged past the mutilated corpses of her family and friends. Yet the man who had led the terrorist raids so that he could steal their possessions called the victim a devil. I dare say that when you began this journey you did not expect Islam to be this bad. This is a special kind of evil. Mohammed terrorized, plundered, and murdered while professing to be God's messenger. That, in my opinion, makes him the most wretched man who ever lived. Yes, I know that the Crusades and the Inquisition were brutal, and Protestantism was born out of lust for power, sex, and money. But it's not the same, not even remotely. The clerics and kings that conspired together to control their subjects hid the Bible and perverted its message. They were misguided hypocrites who used religion to satiate their own cravings. Mohammed, by contrast, claimed to speak for God. He didn't corrupt Islam, he made Islam, as perverted as the spirit that possessed him. Therefore, Mohammed's legacy haunts us today. It pains me beyond words to look into the eyes of a Muslim woman or a child trapped in Islam. There is almost no way to reach them. And if this tortures my soul, what must it do to our Creator? Islam, the curse of Mohammed, has damned over 2 billion men and women. It has left nothing but death and destruction, poverty and despair, persecution and indoctrination, terror and deceit in its wake. Mohammed was the prophet of doom. This beast of a man was now totally out of control. In both Tabari and Ishaq we find,
Mohammed commanded that Safiyah should be kept behind him, and he threw his cloak over her. Thus the Muslims knew that he had chosen her for himself.
Moving on with the saga of the only religion to be born in a milieu of grotesque immorality, piracy, and terror, we are about to add torture to the list of Mohammed's hate crimes.
Tabari and Ishaq. Abi Huqayq,
Safiyah's father,
held the treasure of the Nadir,
the second Jewish tribe Mohammed had exiled from Yathrib.
He was brought to Allah's messenger, and he questioned him, but Huqayq denied knowing where it was. So the prophet questioned other Jews. One said, "I have seen Kinana,"
Safiyah's husband,
"walk around a ruin." Muhammad had Kinana brought to him, and said, "Do you know that if we find it I shall kill you?" "Yes," Kinana answered.
This was Mohammed's second assault on the Nadir. He had stolen their homes, their businesses, and their land the year after he besieged the Quanuqa, a year before he slaughtered the Qurayza. All the Nadir had left was what they had been able to carry on their backs. And remember, this accounting of events is from the Islamic Hadith. There is no other source of information from which a different impression may be drawn. Not a word concerning this man's life or deeds was chronicled within 250 years of his death apart from these books. Therefore, the Muhammad of Islam, the first Muslims, and the foundation of the religion are just as you are listening to them presented here. Alternate theories have nothing to stand on. With each act of violence, Islam's lone prophet became ever more gluttonous, more callous, heinous, and ultimately insane.
Tabari and Ishaq. The prophet commanded that the ruin should be dug up. Some treasure was extracted from it. Then Muhammad asked Kinana for the rest. He refused to surrender it. So Allah's messenger gave orders concerning him to Zubair, saying, "Torture him until you root out and extract what he has." So Zubair kindled a fire on Kinana's chest, twirling it with his fire stick until Kinana was near death. Then the messenger gave him to Maslama, who beheaded him.
Torturing a man whose home and property he had stolen twice, and whose wife he was about to rape, demoted Mohammed from a bloodthirsty terrorist and pirate to a demonic sadist. Anyone who promotes Mohammed's verbal diarrhea as scripture, Mohammed's life as exemplary, or Mohammed's war manifesto as a peaceful religion, is no better than the degenerate who began it all simply to satiate his own personal cravings. It is time we shed our ignorance and admit the truth about Islam. 63 years ago, Pearl Harbor was a wake-up call. America correctly identified the enemy and declared war on Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany. Had the nation, in the aftermath of the September 11th bombings of New York and Washington, protected its citizens by declaring war on fundamental Islam. For having perpetrated that attack, the world would have been safer today. By defending ourselves intelligently against those who attacked us, the legal context for rebuking the hateful and violent religiothek of Islam would have been established, as well as the ability to legally silence the deadly doctrine's most vocal advocates.